Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are here, and it's time for another episode of the Racing Debrief. This week, I feel like it's going to be a shorter episode, but who knows? We could go for 5 hours. So, let's start off with... We'll go with NASCAR this week first. First, the Xfinity Series race at Chicago. We actually got to see the Chicago track, not in the wet. Really the first time we got to see a dry race on the Chicago streets. Last year both Xfinity and Cup had effects of the wet. Especially the Xfinity Series, though, like that was just a downpour. It was so bad that the race last year had to be ended before the halfway point. But this year we didn't have the rain, at least on the Xfinity side. It was a dry weekend, or a dry day, I should say. It was not a dry weekend, but it was a dry day. The first stage of the Xfinity Series race was brilliant. Kyle Larson, Shane Van Gisbergen going back and forth for the lead. I mean, that was a brilliant battle to watch. Honestly, some of the best racing I think I've seen in a while, and those two just going at it for the race victory. It was super super awesome, and I was loving it. I think most people did. I think the general reaction online to it was that it was really good. Shane Van Gisbergen does go out and get the first stage. But, yeah, just brilliant racing between the two of them. Second stage, both those drivers went back a little bit, along with Ty Gibbs, who wasn't really far behind. It was those three pretty much the main players throughout the race. They were able to work their way back up, but stage 2 went to Austin Hill. And that stage, again, the Xfinity race felt like it went by pretty quick just because of how short the race is and how short the stages were. I think it was only like a 15-lap stage. Austin Hill went out, won stage 2. Go to stage 3, and you got Shane Van Gisbergen, you got Kyle Larson, you got Ty Gibbs. They're kind of working their way through the field. Kyle Larson definitely seemed to struggle after his one pit stop. I think that whatever changes they made maybe didn't work out. I know they made some air pressure adjustments and some other changes to the car. That car just didn't seem to get through the traffic as well as SVG and Ty Gibbs. Like, they got through the field a little bit better. But, yeah, Kyle Larson seemed to struggle a little bit. In the end, SVG got through the field. I mean, he was gone. Got the win. Ty Gibbs second, Kyle Larson third. Not really surprised in that order. All three of those drivers were really contenders in that race and really seemed to be the guys that would be the ones to be in the Cup race, right? So that was that. But I thought that race was just brilliant. Again, Shane Van Gisbergen gets the win. Third win of the year. That puts him at the most wins of any driver in the Xfinity Series on the season. And I mean, just brilliant. Brilliant to see. Obviously, we kind of knew he'd be good on road courses. Obviously, we knew he'd be good at Chicago. He won there last year. But, winning those races is key for him because the playoffs only feature for the Xfinity Series one road course race. We look at the schedule here. Xfinity Series, they only have Charlotte Roval. So, good thing for him. I mean, he can probably win that, advance to the round of 8. But again, he hasn't got the ovals down perfectly. He's done very well, especially in the second half of those races, and going to some of these tracks for a second time. But those wins on the road course is stacking up the stage points. It's going to be important. I mean, he's got 17 playoff points right now, so this is going to help him as he goes through. There's one more road course, Watkins Glen, in September, so we'll definitely see him go for another win there. But again, he's been in a spot to win all the road courses. Portland, Sonoma, Chicago, he did win. Certainly the Americans of Austin Hill didn't run him off the track, and whatever happened there, he got disqualified at the end anyways. But he had a good shot to win that. So, he's been killing it. Obviously, we knew he'd do good at those tracks. But even the ovals, he hasn't done bad. So, I think he's definitely going to be a threat in the playoffs. But we'll see. As for the Cup Series, the race was definitely wild. At the start of it, it was a little bit wet. So, you started on, some drivers on slicks, some drivers on the wet weather tires. I like to call them. I don't like to call them rain tires. So at a road course, they are rain tires. If that makes sense. Yeah, it's weird, but either way, it started out a little bit of both, right, for the drivers. First stage relatively calm, but we knew rain was coming. Shane Van Gisbergen gets the win in the first stage. He's up there again. Ty Gibbs, Kyle Larson, SVG. Those are the guys that were really towards the front. Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick. Those are like the 5 guys that you really seen throughout the race. But again, the 3 from the Xfinity race and those, other 2 were the main contenders throughout the day. You go, and it starts to rain really, really heavy, and it was just right towards the beginning of the second stage. All the drivers come out of the pits, doing their thing, and Shane Van Gisbergen gets hit by Chase Briscoe just very, very slightly. It was such a light tap, but that set him in the wall, ended his race. He ended up finishing last. And again, just a lot of guys finding the barriers. I mean, throughout the day, it was just like last year. Because again, I think that the wet always brings that out, right? I mean, these are drivers who are used to racing on dry ovals, most of them. Rain racing in NASCAR in general is relatively new. I mean, you get some of those races from the late 2000s, early 2010s when NASCAR used to race, especially in Canada. You had a few rain ones. But when they used to race in Mexico and Canada, they had the rain option for the Xfinity Series, but we didn't really see it for the Cup Series until, some of the road courses. It was an option they added in, maybe like, I feel like it was 2018, 2019, but we didn't really see it because you had Watkins Glen. Really is the only option, right? You had Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Those are the 2 tracks that NASCAR race on road courses. So, unless it happened to rain in Watkins Glen, you weren't going to see a race in it, right? You had that one Xfinity race in Mid-Ohio, I think it was 2016. It rained. Might have been like a Road America race, 2015, something like that. But you didn't see the rain that often. And again, for the Cup cars, they didn't start racing in the rain until, 2020, 2021, when it was more of a consistent thing because we went to more road courses. And now, obviously, we've seen it in New Hampshire, the cars running on an oval when the track was damp. So, racing in the rain has definitely become, or in the wet, has become more of a newer thing in NASCAR. It wasn't a common thing. So a lot of the drivers maybe haven't raced it that much. And again, on a course like Chicago, it is a street, so it drains differently and it absorbs the water differently because it's just a paved road that you can drive on through the street, right? It's not anything special. It's not a racetrack, right? So the way that it absorbs the water, the way the road is made, right? You got certain spots that they patch and whatever. It's not like Formula One where they had to have the whole Las Vegas Strip repaved. This is just the road in Chicago. Because I honestly like it that way better for the road instead of just saying we got to repave it for a race. Leave it the way it is, right? Race on the streets. You're gonna race a street. But you could see there was different spots. There was paved, patched, different surfaces. They were saying that the broadcast part of it is concrete, so like it was just different, right? Concrete, regular asphalt, going over a bridge, which is going to be made differently. So the race throughout the surfaces were just different. The way it's set up is it's a narrow track. So going off of the barriers and going into a wall or whatever isn't that uncommon. And you add in some wet weather and drivers trying to drive on slicks or whatever, but it got to be a bit too much. NASCAR decided to red flag it, which was disappointing, but I get it. There was so much spray. I feel like rain delays are so common, but obviously if you watch NASCAR races, you know that feeling of the race is going, you're into it, oh, let's stop. And it's not just like a 5-minute stop, it's always hour, 2 hours, you're sitting there waiting, like, it's always disappointing. It was a bit frustrating. But race got back going after about an hour and a half. Cars were getting fired up, all the drivers in, engines on, a little bit more rain comes through, so had to wait a little bit longer. But again, race got back going. Christopher Bell took the lead from Ty Gibbs pretty early on. Also, throughout the rest of the race, we had single file restarts. From there, Christopher Bell looked like he was going to dominate the race. And then you also had the added in element of the race had to end by 8:20 Central Time. So 9:20 Eastern Time. So going towards that time, that also added in, with the clock of your racing, it's not going to stop. There's a caution doesn't pause the time. The timer's going. When the timer hits, the timer hits. So stage 2, the end of that, Christopher Bell won stage 2, or did he win stage 2? No, Joey Hand won stage 2. I don't know why I said Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell came into the pit. Ty Gibbs came into pit. You had about 15 drivers, 10, 15 drivers stay out. I believe Christopher Bell restarted about 14. Yeah, so about the top 15 stayed out. Because I remember telling my mom where the drivers were in the orders, trying to think of that moment. Yeah, it was like 14th. So Christopher Bell was 14th. Ty Gibbs was about 16th. They're the first two. They're going to be on the slick tires. So they're going to be able to run down these guys that are on the, the rain tires. So go through a little more of the race. Actually, I forgot to mention Kyle Larson absolutely smashed into the barrier at the end of the long main straight, or the long main road. Was after turn 5? Yeah, going into turn 6. He hit that barrier. And he found the one spot where the tires, I feel like they should be over a little more after seeing how he hit, but he hit right into the 2 stacks of tires and found the concrete wall. That was a wild crash. But, yeah, again, so you had Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Larson both out as well. So that added an element to the race of, well, the 2 favorites were out. But, from there, again, thinking through the rest of the race, it looked like Christopher Bell had it, but having to drive through really hurt him. He had a late caution. I believe it was, I don't know, probably Josh Berry, I'd imagine. He crashed 3 times throughout the race. So it was probably Josh Berry or somebody. Somebody crashed. I don't remember. Too many drivers finding the barriers to remember who crashed and caused a caution, who crashed and didn't cause a caution. Either there was a late caution. Yeah, it was Josh Berry because he got stuck on the barrier. They had to call the caution. So Josh Berry in the tires had to call the caution. So it was about 4 or 5 minutes left in the race. Christopher Bell starts charging through. He gets slightly tapped from Truex and Stenhouse and all them. So he hits the wall. That takes him out. Ty Gibbs looks like he's charging through. And all while Alex Bowman's in the lead, which Alex Bowman winning is a little disappointing. But, whatever. Ty Gibbs charging through. He gets blocked by Brad Keselowski a little bit. That kind of messes him up. And then Tyler Reddick looks like he's going to charge. Bowman's taking the white flag. Reddick hits the wall. That's it. Bowman wins the race. Bubba Wallace comes up and hits into him on the cool-down lap, which I'm sure the internet won't melt down about at all. But, yeah. Overall, Chicago, I think, was good. I think a lot of people saying, I wish she went to Chicagoland or whatever. I'm kind of overhearing about Chicagoland. Like, Chicagoland was great in 2019. Chicagoland will probably do great with the next-gen car, but Chicago Street Race has been brilliant both years. I love road course racing. I think it's awesome. I think that road course, especially with Xfinity cars, but again, the next-gen car isn't terrible. It could be better. I think Chicago really suits it. I think it races well there. I want to see a full Chicago race at the Cup cars, right? I feel like we've been teased the last 2 years, right? With last year it ending at some point, and then this year, that the set time, we just haven't got the full race. So I'd like to see the full race next year, and hopefully Chicago continues, and if Chicago doesn't, give me another street race, right? Give me a street race somewhere. That I'm all for the street racing. I think it's cool. Um, F1. Let's talk about F1 real quick. Um, British Grand Prix. Again, also a race affected by the rain. Started out Mercedes, top two cars. Lando Norris third, Max Verstappen fourth. Those are pretty much the main drivers you've seen throughout the race. I feel like the broadcast really focused on the top four throughout the day. And honestly, from the start, both Mercedes gone. Max ended up passing Lando pretty quickly, and that's kind of where they stayed. As the rain started to come in, strategies, changed up. Some of the drivers going to intermediates when they shouldn't have. Ferrari really threw with Leclerc, really hurt his day by putting him on intermediates. Drivers survived the first storm. The Mercedes, the McLarens, and Max Verstappen's Red Bull. Those 5 cars survived the rain. Didn't come in, they're good. Next time it starts to rain heavier, they all come in for intermediates. And this puts, the McLarens ended up getting through. Because again, the Mercedes were killing it. The McLaren just came alive all of a sudden. Lando Norris gets to the front. And then from there, it's looking like, okay, we're going to see a McLaren win or whatever. But as the race shifts through the rain part of it, to about lap 40, 45, the race goes and becomes a dry race again. So we start seeing that. Lando Norris throws another win, as he does every week. Slides the car through the pits, or through his pit stop area, right? His pit braking spot. Slides through that. It's not really a pit box, but slides through where he gets his pit stop in the rain. This allows Lewis Hamilton to pass him, who's gone to soft tires. Lando Norris decided to go to soft tires instead of mediums, bizarrely. Max Verstappen's on the hard tires. He is charging. He's able to get by Lando Norris. Didn't have enough time to pass Lewis Hamilton, so Lewis Hamilton gets the win. Obviously putting aside the rivalries from years ago, seeing Lewis Hamilton get back to winning is quite cool, right? Obviously, 2021 really was the only year that I was kind of annoyed by Lewis Hamilton. I guess going into 2022, but those years, obviously, being a Max Verstappen fan, that was difficult. But Lewis Hamilton's always been a driver I've kind of liked, right? He's the only person I ever followed from F1 before watching F1, right? So Lewis Hamilton's definitely a driver that I don't dislike. I think that there was a year and a half where I really didn't like him, but that was, again, the rivalry with Max Verstappen. But, obviously seeing the respect they have for each other, being around Lewis Hamilton fans and my brother, my mom, both fans, seeing how excited my mom was when Lewis Hamilton won, seeing on Instagram that my brother was, emotional about the win. It was cool to see, obviously for them, obviously for Lewis Hamilton, seeing him have his emotions for winning. It was cool to see. Obviously, I feel like the greats in sports you want to see succeed, and at some point, whether you've liked them or not, you kind of put that to the side, and when they, win one after they've probably hit that peak, right, when it's probably like, okay, they're on the decline in their career, when you see those, people winning. I mean, I've seen that for myself throughout, the time of watching NASCAR. There's been drivers I didn't like, right? Growing up, I didn't like Jeff Gordon, didn't like Jimmy Johnson, but in the later stages of their career, I mean, 2014, 2015, Jeff Gordon, it was brilliant to see him winning, right? Jimmy Johnson, those last few years that he was racing full time, I wanted to see him go get a win. Somebody like Kyle Busch, I wasn't the biggest fan of him, but, the last few years, seeing him go get a win would be cool, right? See him get a win this season. I want Kyle Busch to win in 2024, right? Or whoever, Martin Truex, see him get one win in his last final season, right? Like, that's something you just want to see. So Lewis Hamilton's definitely towards the end of his racing career, so this win, I think, has a lot of meaning to him and his fans, and to witness history, to see a driver get their record-setting number of wins at a track, 9 wins. Nobody's ever done it at one single track. That's really awesome to see as well. So Lewis Hamilton winning the British Grand Prix, it was cool, and I'm totally good with seeing Max Verstappen come second to him. It was a brilliant race, brilliant drive from Lewis Hamilton, and again, to see him excited, see my mom excited about it, see my brother excited about it. Yeah, it was a good day. It was a good day. So, we'll see you guys in the next one. We'll see you guys next week. NASCAR heads to Pocono. Do we have trucks next week? Not that I want to talk about it, but yeah, we have trucks. Alright, cool. We got racing. NASCAR next week. Pocono. We'll see you guys then.